He also specializes in the member benefits section, and I kind of work more with the Wednesday workshops. And today we have with us from the North Carolina Emergency Management, Blake, is it Swix? Is that right?
Swix.
Okay. And she's going to talk to us about emergency preparedness and what we need to put in our emergency kit so that we are prepared no matter what the emergency might be, not just hurricanes, but winter storms and any other kind of disaster that might come our way. And North Carolina seems to have our fair share of emergency management needs. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Blake to take us through her presentation.
Thank you. Yeah. Give me one moment here. Are you able to see the presentation now?
Did you cut your
Yes.
audio off, Les? Is your audio off? On the computer.
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you, Sandra.
Yes.
All right. You guys are all ready. So this presentation is about emergency preparedness, and I'll walk you through what that kind of means and some tips and tricks for you all. And here we go. All right, so first, one of the more important things is to make a plan. So if you have your kit, that's great, but what are you going to do once you have your kit? So depending on the situation will change on how you might have a plan. So making a plan means you're talking amongst whom you live with and maybe who you don't live with, letting someone know, a neighbor or someone know your plan or make them part of your plan, especially if you need assistance doing like getting to and from, if you have accessibility needs, or if you have someone in your household who has accessibility needs as well, it might be helpful to have an extra person to help with that. So you also want to think about like medical equipment and how you're going to transfer those from one place to another. You plan to have a safe place to go. So if something happens, do you know where your local shelters are? Do you know your local evacuation routes, especially if you're on the Eastern Coast? Do you know your zone? Is it a popular thing that determines what zone you are and where to go if a hurricane comes in your evacuation route? So those are some things you might want to consider when you're making your plan.
Excuse me, Blake, but I think your PowerPoint has disappeared. So if you want to check your share screen.
Okay, let me try again.
I can see it. I can see it, Levita.
Hey, well, I can't, so I don't know what's going on. I saw it and then it disappeared.
I can see it.
Okay, I'll check and see if it's something. I've got it now.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So when you're making your plan, there's also a communications plan. Meaning, do you have a list of emergency contacts? Like, do you have it written out? If you have your phone, do you have that listed out in your telephone? You also might want to think about, sometimes people designate an out-of-state contact. So if your cousin lives in New York or in Idaho or someone out of state, and you have their contact information, because a lot of times what happened, especially during Helene, is there was no communications, so people were struggling to get a hold of their loved ones. So if you have your designated out-of-state contact to check in with them after the disaster, it kind of allows that person to notify other maybe family members that you're okay. And especially if all of your family's in the same area, you know, if you have a way to contact that person out of state to let them know you're okay, it kind of helps with that when you're all in the same area. So you also want to add that list of contacts, of your emergency contacts, to your kit. That way, when something happens, you have that list of phone numbers or addresses to be able to talk to those people and remember their phone numbers. Because this day and age, it's really easy to go on your smartphone and click on that contact and call them without even having to remember their phone number. So that's a good way to not have to remember it, but you have a way to know what those numbers are. And sometimes those emergency contacts also could be, you might want to think about like your doctor's office, just having that phone number and address with you. You might not need to call them per se, but it might be good to have that information. So if you're displaced somewhere, you can have a way to find a way to contact maybe that doctor's office and maybe get some of your medical records, or have that doctor's, maybe you're in a different doctor's office right now and you need to have those records transferred. So that's another one to think about. And then you also want to discuss, like, amongst your family, what that communications plan looks like. If I call you and I'm going to send this very specific message to let you know that I'm okay, or this specific message to know that I need help, or this is where I am, or something. So just practicing those and letting your friends and family know what your plan is on how you plan to communicate with one another during a disaster. Because I don't know. Okay, yep. I mean, my joke is always you're not going to be able to call the Ghostbusters to come save you. So you're going to need your communication plan and have that in place. So next is to prepare your home and property. You want to take pictures and document your property before an event happens. So if you know that something might be on the horizon, you might want to start taking photos of your home or your property to know what it looks like before. So if something were to happen, then you have evidence to show what you've owned and what it looked like before, to hopefully help you with maybe if you're going to put an insurance claim in, or you need further assistance from FEMA or the state. That way you can show what your property looked like before and all the things that you may or may not have lost, which is unfortunate, but it also will help you in the long run with insurance, if anything. A lot of homeowner insurance policies do not cover flood insurance. And if you're in a flood-prone area, more than likely you might need to have flood insurance. And if you're going to add flood insurance, you want to make sure you do it at least 30 days before maybe hurricane season or something like that, or a time when you get abundance of rain, because it's not just hurricanes that cause flooding. It can be a lot of rain as well. So that's just something to think about. And there's numerous different flood insurance providers out there if you need it. That is a resource that we recommend for those in flood-prone areas. And then another thing is just to tidy up loose items that might fly around. If there's a tornado or hurricane or something along those lines where there's some really strong winds, you might want to tidy down like your outdoor patio furniture or different things that might be blown away or get damaged in the winds or flood. Next thing that sometimes gets overlooked is called weather radios. Hopefully most of you have a weather radio. If not, I would highly recommend getting one so you can get important information, especially when cell towers go down or electricity goes out. You have an option with a weather radio. They have solar powered ones, they have battery powered ones. or they have even hand cranked ones. And there's some that use all three if you need. So that's a great way to receive information, just to listen in to see what the alerts are, if you need to shelter in place, if you need to evacuate, what the weather is going to be. And it allows for you to receive information without having electricity and cell service. And you'll get regular updates with the weather radio. So if you tune into your National Weather Service station, which if you go to their website, which is listed here, weather.gov/NWR/station_search. So if you go to the weather.gov and you just look for your weather station, it'll be whatever's in your approximate area that covers, that station will cover. And so that's the station you'll tune into on your weather radio to get that information. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have emergency kits, but they're a great thing to have when any disaster strikes. It can be anything. It could be a tornado, a really bad thunderstorm, and power's out for a few days or a week. It doesn't necessarily have to be the most catastrophic disaster for you to need an emergency kit. So that's something to think about if you don't have one. Off to the side is just a few random things that you can put into your emergency kit. Everything's going to depend on your household and what you need. You'll need enough supplies for at least 4 to 7 days is the recommendation. You're going to want to make sure that you make your kit accessible and that it's not buried under something. So you have to scramble to find it and get it out. So you want to make sure it's accessible somewhere. Or if you know that a disaster may or may not be coming this way towards you, you might want to just set it by your front door or somewhere that you're going to easily find it and be able to take it and go. Or if you don't need to leave your home, I mean, there's also times where you'll shelter in place, and you'll want to have that still ready, accessible. You'll also want to make sure that you update your kit at least once or twice a year, depending on what you've put in your kit. Especially depends on what food you've chosen to put in there. You might want to check to see if it's expired, or if the medication has expired, or different things like that. You'll also want to make sure like your batteries are not expired as well, because you don't want to have batteries that don't work when you really need them. So just some things to think about for your emergency kit. And then I've further expanded what that might look like. So food and water, you'll want to have plenty of water, and we recommend canned fruit and vegetables. If you have a way to heat up food, you could always do canned soup. Shelf-stable protein, so a lot of times that could be like beef jerky, it could be canned tuna, different things like that if you need extra protein. A can opener is really helpful in this situation as well when you have a bunch of canned food. And then just any non-perishable snacks are also recommended. Or if you're maintaining your kit at least once or twice a year, if you put in pretzels or something closer to the time of the event, you might not have to worry about throwing those out. Just some things to think about on that. And then health and hygiene. A lot of times, even if you'll probably want a toothbrush and toothpaste, and you can use some of your water to do that. Or if you're at a shelter and they have a bathroom, you'll be able to brush your teeth. So things like deodorant, first aid kit, extra glasses. If you take a particular type of medication, you might want to have extra of those on hand. Toilet paper if you need, shampoo, conditioner, just in case there are showers available at a shelter you might go to. So just some things to think about on those. And then next I have also listed out some electronics tools and important documents. Depending on who you are and what your needs are, or what your family needs are, you may want to have extra batteries just for, it could be for a flashlight, for the weather radio, but also want to make sure you have extra medical device batteries. So if you have hearing devices, if you, different things like that where you might need to have extra batteries on hand. You'll want to have a flashlight, a portable charger or phone charger if you have one. The portable battery packs are really handy. You just want to make sure you charge those fully before you put them in your kit. And those can be very helpful to recharge your cell phone or other electronics. You could also do battery powered walkie-talkies. So if that's part of your communication plan with your family, is to have walkie-talkies to communicate with each other when cell service is down, that could also be a helpful tool. And you probably want the battery powered ones, because then if electricity is out, then at least those might be working with the battery powder. Something like a multi-tool, a wrench, or pliers could be helpful depending on your situation. The multi-tool, has multiple uses, so it could be useful in many ways. If you need, trash bags could also be a thing that you could add to your kit, just so that way you don't have to worry about where you're putting your garbage if you need to. And then a weather radio, and we've talked about those. Some important documents to think about keeping in your kit as well might be copies of your insurance policies, copies of your social security card, copy of some form of ID. So if it's a passport or driver's license, if you have a copy of your deed or a renter's agreement, depending on where you live, if you need it. And then two other things I would say are good to keep in your kit as well are an address book or contact book as part of your communications plan. You'll want to have a hard copy to keep in your kit. And then lastly, another thing that people might not always think about is a list of prescriptions. So if you have glasses, you might want to have your eye prescriptions, medication, hearing aid, whatever it may be. Just that way, if you are displaced and you need to go to another medical office, you have that information with you, and you can go there and get your medication at a pharmacy, or if the shelter is providing some kind of aid to with nursing or whatnot, they can know what kind of medications you're taking. And then you can also, if something happens to your glasses, you could go get a new pair of glasses. Just some things to think about as something happens. And during Helene, I heard a lot of people didn't have those types of lists of their prescriptions, and we're having issues trying to get maybe a new pair of glasses because there's got just broke or something during the storm and being displaced, and their medication needing to be refilled. So that's just a couple things you might want to think about. And then we also, available on readync.gov, we have an emergency kit list, checklist. So if you want to, you can scan the QR code on the screen, or I've also provided a copy that can be sent out to you all as well. Or you're welcome to go to readync.gov and you can find the checklist. If you search emergency kit checklist, it'll populate in PDF and you can print it out if you need to use it. And it has a list of things that you can check off as you're putting into your kit, and make notes if you need to. This also is available in Spanish if anybody needs a Spanish version to give to your neighbors or loved ones. This can be a great resource for anybody who wants to build their kit, and kind of a way to know what you do and do not have, and maybe some other ideas on maybe something you didn't think about that you might need. And then another thing I'll talk about, a way is to stay informed. That's one of the most important things during a disaster, is knowing how to get information, and a weather radio is great and it works really well, especially when cell service is not available. But another form of an alert or way to stay informed is through WIA, which is a wireless emergency alert. And it's an alert that you'll get on your phone. So if you've ever received the Amber Alerts for a missing person or child, those alerts go off on your phone. It's the same thing. So if you're within a certain area, you'll get a ping on your cell phone. As long as your cell phone is has that setting turned on, you'll get an emergency alert telling you whether it's from a local emergency management. Usually is they'll send out a WIA, and the WIA will say, in this area, a dam may break and you need to evacuate this area, or a tornado is going to affect this area, you might need to take shelter, different things like that. And it could be life-saving information, and it's really important to have those on your phone. And it could help save your life and others. So I encourage everyone to make sure you're on your phone settings that the emergency alert is turned on. And I will go over how to do that in the next few slides. All right, so this is a video about what WIA is, and let me know if you can't hear it or if it's not playing for you.
Yeah, they do. I think, my aunt Evelyn, they had somebody supposed to speak. She was having her.
Is it playing, Blake?
It's supposed to be.
I don't hear it.
I don't hear it. I don't hear it.
I don't hear it.
Okay.
I don't hear it.
Well, let's see if I can. Sure, but I can send this video through so that way you all can take a look at it. I'm sorry you can't hear it, but it's good information about what a WIA is and what it can do. You know, it's a free service that you can use to get information. Okay. So we'll move on to the next slide then. How to check your WIA settings in your phone, whether you have an Android or Apple phone. If you have other devices, you can always search in your settings on your phone, and usually it's some sort of government alert or safety and emergency alerts. And you'll make sure you select to toggle on that and then turn that on for the wireless emergency alerts. That's what WIA stands for. And so that way you'll get the alert to your phone saying, and it pings on what area you're in. So if you're not usually in your home area and you're visiting family somewhere, you'll still get the alert telling you that there's, like I said earlier, like a tornado nearby, you need to take shelter, that there's a dam nearby that they think may breach, so you need to evacuate to this area. WIA also only allows for so many characters most times, so you might get multiple WIA alerts on the same thing, and you'll be able to see those and get that information so you know where to go if you're for whatever particular situation is going on. So it could help save lives. This is one thing that was a very major critique. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Texas floods that happened over the summer, but they did not have wireless emergency alerts all set up in some of those areas, and so some people did not receive notification that this was going to happen. So it is life-saving information, and it can be very important to make sure that those are on. If you already received the Amber Alerts or things like that, odds are you might have the WIA setting already on, but you can always check in your settings on your phone as well. And then one of the last things I'll talk about might not be a particular way for you just to be prepared, but you can help your community be prepared. So attending things like this is a great way to do that, but also there's some other volunteering opportunities you can always do as well. You can join a CERT team, a REVAC team, a VOAD, and those are the three big ones that you can join. But there's all kinds of things you can do to make sure that you and your neighbors are prepared for disaster, or if a disaster happens and you want to volunteer your time, these are some organizations that you can do that with. And they're great resources, even if you're not going to be volunteering with them, but they're great resources to know about. And you can go to their websites and learn how to become part of those. A VOAD is a voluntary organization active in disaster, so it could be anything like Red Cross or anything like that. A community emergency response team, if you get a hold of your local emergency management, odds are they have some information on how you can join, and they're volunteering organizations. And you can also volunteer at your local public schools to help them, whether it's maybe tidying down some things outside if the storm's going to come, or if there's a way to help kids know how to evacuate or what to do in an emergency. If you want to give a presentation on how to build an emergency kit, those are also important, and they can be useful for any age. So just some things to think about if you do want to volunteer. And then a couple of resources that I'll point you to is Know Your Zone. Know Your Zone is for the coastal region of North Carolina. So if you live on the coast, you can go to Know Your Zone and type in what area you live in. And if you live along the coast, it will tell you which areas you can evacuate to. We also have the North Carolina Hurricane Guide, which is located on readync.gov. It gives you all kinds of information on what you need to know about how to prepare for a hurricane and what to do during a hurricane. And it expands on the emergency kit as well. So that's available online, both English and Spanish. And you can download the PDF version and read through that. And it's a great way to build a conversation around that with your neighbors as well, getting them prepared. And the Hurricane Guide can be useful in many ways. And another one I will point out, it's not directly with emergency management, but DOT, is drivenc.gov. Hopefully most of you know that by now, but you can type in where you're trying to travel to, and it will show you if at any time, it does not just during disaster, what roads are closed, alternative routes, and different things like that. It's live, it's ongoing all day long, all night long. It's a 24-hour thing. You can type in information where you're wanting to travel, and it will show you the routes and if there's a hazard in that route. So that's something that you'll want to take a look at, especially if we're having a flooding event. If there's streets flooded and it's updated, it will tell you that that street is flooded and maybe you don't want to drive that way because you do not want to drive in flooded waters. So that could give you some alternative paths to take. And then lastly, if you go to readync.gov, that is our preparedness website for the state. Some counties or towns have their own version of their own Ready website, which is also a great resource, but the state also has one if your county or local municipality does not. And you can get all these different information. So you can get current weather conditions, evacuation routes and orders, road conditions, shelters, how to get disaster assistance, the hurricane guide, how to build your kit, if you own a business, how to prepare your business, and current disaster information. And one thing I'll note about the weather conditions, it will tell you if there's hazardous weather and all the different things you might need to know about that. And that's usually updated pretty regularly. We have meteorologists at North Carolina Emergency Management that will put that weather update out on the website. So you can go to readync.gov to get all of that information. It's a great resource, and I hope that you explore it and take some time to look it over, and hopefully it helps you become more prepared for any disaster North Carolina might face. And that's the end of my presentation. Let me know if you have any questions.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your well-informed presentation. Do you mind repeating the link for the weather radios?
Yeah, so I can also put it in the chat as well. Let me pull
Thank
it back
you.
up. Yeah. So it's weather.gov/NWR/station_search. And I'll also put this in the chat for you all as well. Yep, and that website will take you, I can actually show you a quick demonstration if you'd like. Okay, let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, perfect. So this is the National Weather Service website, and that's the link that I gave to you guys. So I typed that in. And you'll go here and you can search a zip code or an address, and it will tell you what your weather station is. So that'll tell you this weather station covers this area, and this is where you can tune in to get that information.
Blake, I have a question. I
Mhm.
was a member of the state emergency response team, and I know one of the reports that was always given on the hour for the emergency updates was the airports that are affected. Does this drivenc.gov, does that also tell you which airports are open and closed?
I don't think I don't remember if it does. It's a DOT website. Let me see if I can't filter it. No, it looks like it's just roadways at the
Okay.
moment. I'm sure there are websites you can go to see what closures there are for airlines and airports. But Drive and See is primarily roadways because it is a
Okay.
DOT website.
Someone had a question about how to find out their evacuation site. How would they find out?
So oftentimes I will tell you to go, most county emergency managements have their own website, and you can go there, or you can call your local emergency management, whether it's the municipality or the county, depending on where you live. If you call them and ask, they should be able to let you know that information. If you live along the coast, you can use Know Your Zone. So if you search Know Your Zone, North Carolina, it will populate the website, and you can go there, and it'll tell you what your evacuation route is if you're along the coast. And I can put that link in there for the Know Your Zone in the chat as well.
I think it's important for everyone to know their local emergency management person. So if there is a need for, say, someone's lost in a flood and they need swift water rescue or something, resource that the state emergency response team provides, they would go through their local municipal or county emergency team and make a request for what resource they need. A vehicle or supplies or rescue.
Yes, definitely get to know your local emergency management. Often, quite a few times, we've been called out to come to local community events that they're hosting with emergency management on preparedness. So definitely look them up, and a lot of them do have different social media pages. So if you have Facebook, a lot of them do have Facebook, so that way if you do want to explore some maybe events that they have, you can go that route, or always feel free to call your local emergency management as well, and you can inquire about those routes. Those are always done at the local level. So you'll definitely want to infer with them on what that looks like for evacuation routes or different information they may have.
I saw on one of the slides, senior preparedness. How is that different from just general preparedness?
Yeah, so let me pull that up for you guys. So I'll share my screen so you guys can see. Okay, so seniors, it lists some different things that you might need to know. So a lot of times it has to do with medical. So if you have certain medical devices that a lot of times primarily it's the senior community that has those. Doesn't mean it's limited to the senior community, but just keeping, so it says keeping specialized items, make sure you advocate for yourself, and know your network. So like I said, you'll want to keep a list of maybe your medical conditions or your medications or different things like that. Or if you know someone that has a mobility type device, so if it's a wheelchair or a walker or something like that, you might want to keep some kind of notes on that. Or if they have a prescription for a certain thing, you might want to keep a copy of that as well. And a lot of times that usually pertains to the senior community, but again, it's not limited. And then on the website, it also talks about Social Security. If you're getting benefits from Social Security and you're getting payments, maybe through the mail or something, you might want to find a way to do an alternative way to do that during the time. So if there's, for instance, during Hurricane Helene, mail service was not happening. So you might want to find a way, an alternate way to get those funds if you need them and you're depending on them. So that goes over that. It talks about having a support network. So who are your family and friends? If you're not able to get out of the door yourself, or your loved one is, lives alone but has a wheelchair and is elderly, they may need to have a specialized plan to get them out of the home and with their mobility device. So those are things that it kind of goes over, talking about different medical supplies that you might want to think about keeping in your kit. Talking about medications. If an older adult needs routine medical care, like from a nurse or a CNA or something, you might want to have that information available. So if you go to a shelter with that person or you yourself, that way they know the shelter can accommodate and help find a way for you to get that resource. So if you're coming to the shelter and you get there and you tell them, I need X, Y, and Z care. And if they don't have that ready available, they can request it and get that service for you. And then other things you might want to think about are the vital documents, which across the board for anybody. But so this list just goes over some more details on that. Things that may particularly are for senior citizens versus younger families. But again, it's not limited just to senior citizens. I think the biggest thing that might be the biggest difference is the medical equipment and the Social Security. If you're receiving Social Security benefits and you're depending on those, you might want to have an extra plan on how to receive those payments. So just some things to think about on those.
That was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Blake, in an emergency, does the 911 system in North Carolina still work as long as there's cell service?
As long as there's communication towers still available and the 911 center itself has not been impacted. What happened during Helene, it's a good example is 911 centers were down kind of everywhere in Western North Carolina. So what happened was when those went down, then all the calls got transferred out to Central and Eastern North Carolina in the areas that were not impacted. So 911 still does work, but only call it in a true emergency. If you're looking for information about shelters and different things, you can call 211, which is United Way's information line. That's a great resource if you're just looking for shelter information or trying to find general information. Call 211 instead of 911. What we did during Helene too, and I don't know if United Way's plan is to do this again, but communication towers were down everywhere, and it was hard for other people outside of Western North Carolina to get in touch with their loved ones. So what 211 did is if you called into 211, they would take down the name of your loved one and they would put it into a system. So that way 911 wasn't getting inundated with calls about missing people or loved ones that they had not heard from. So 211 is a great resource for that kind of stuff versus 911, which you should call in a true emergency. Do call 911. Most of the time, if a 911 center is down in your area, more than likely it's going to pick up in a different 911 center that is available to take those calls, and then they will reroute those resources where needed. So yes, you can always call 911.
Okay, that's good, because if the area was flooded, for example, and some of your neighbors were on their roof and you were trying to call and get help for them, the 911 would be routed somewhere else. Okay, good.
Correct. Yep. Yep. As long as you can call 911, they can still take that call somewhere. Yeah, it might take during Helene, a lot of people were calling 911. And I mean, those get pushed further and further out across the state, and those lines became very busy very quickly. And so some people weren't able to get through right away. So if you're in an emergency situation, do call 911. However, if you're looking for more like informational things or you need to know information about a loved one, I would recommend calling 211 to free up the 911 line for those who need to call for an emergency. So definitely still call 911 and those calls will be routed. Anybody have any other questions that I can help answer?
With the kit that you recommended keeping all of our important documents and things in, I don't know, several years ago, I had seen an emergency preparedness blurb on one of the local TV channels, and they said to make sure you put it in a satchel or some sort of file case that had a handle on it so that you could it was always ready and you could just grab it on the way out the door and you always knew where it was, and either beside your bed or under your desk or somewhere that was a consistent location, but that had a handle so you could just grab it.
Yep, I agree with that. That definitely is very helpful. because you just want to grab and go. So that's why I made the point about keeping whatever you're going to use as your emergency go kit, whether it's the papers, like the papers are really important, but also those various items that you might need to grab and go quickly, keep those in accessible areas so that way you can just grab it and go and you don't have to think, oh my God, where did I put this? And it's buried somewhere and you're spending all this time looking for that stuff. If you have it, like you said, in some kind of bag or something, or some kind of binder or something that has a handle, you can grab it and go. That's really helpful, yes.
How often do you need to check it to make sure things haven't expired, like food and batteries?
Yeah, so my recommendation is probably once or twice a year, depending on when you've built your kit. I would also recommend if you know something is going to occur or possibility that something is going to occur, I would check it within those, 5 to 10 days before too, just to make sure that you have everything you need. But the thought behind building your kit before that time is that you don't have to think about it. But if you know that there's some medication and things that maybe you can't get, extra supply of, you might want to think about throwing that in there, throwing an extra few pills or whatever it may be in your kit, things like that that you may need to update. So just depending on what kind of things you have in your kit may depend on how often you might want to update it, but you definitely want to check it once or twice a year. Just make sure you don't have expired food, that the batteries still work, that if you have a battery pack for your phone or electronics, that battery pack is charged, and that your medication maybe list is updated if you've changed medications or different things like that. That's always a good time to update it, as well as making sure those medication lists or your prescriptions are up to date as well.
Not hearing any other questions for Ren, I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. Certainly thank Blake for her very informative presentation. And I know we're all going to be working on double checking our kits or starting to make our kits. I always like to say thank you to Carol for all the support she lends to this endeavor of the North Carolina Retired School Personnel. And a reminder that next month, as we start looking at open enrollment with our insurance, we will have Sarah Combs come and speak to us on our supplemental benefits that we can enroll in. And that too will be at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then looking forward to November, we actually have our member benefits, Kimberly Lindsay, coming to speak to us. So that the next two are going to be on things that you can use to make and stretch that dollar out a little bit more as we keep waiting on the General Assembly to hopefully do something for us retired folks. So with no further ado, again, say thank you to everyone for participating. Thank you again, Blake, for presenting. Thank you, Carol, for being there. And I'll see you next month, hopefully.
Thank you guys so much. And I'll just say one last closing comment is having your kit really does help first responders as well, get to other people who may not, and respond to those who need it. So having your kit can be very helpful, not just for you, but for other responders, and maybe your fellow neighbors as well might need help as well. So just keep that in mind when you're building your kit, that it's expands just beyond you and it helps your community as a whole. But thank you all very much for taking your time to come this morning to hear me talk about emergency preparedness. Please reach out to NCM if you have any questions. Always stay in contact with your local emergency management if you have questions about your local area. They're a great resource as well. Don't overlook your local emergency management. Thank you all for coming this morning, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you.